federal appeals court ruled just before we went live today that Donald Trump's claim that he has absolute immunity from prosecution, in particular, most important part is against the charges that he tried to overturn the results of the 2020 election, is bunk, rejected. It's not gonna happen. And much more important than that is what the judges actually said in making that ruling. Now, of course, this is the Court of Appeals. It is not the last stop for this. All expectations are that the Supreme Court will be ruling in on that, and we will go over that. But first, I do want to talk about this appeals court. Now, there are two Democrats on it, or at least two judges who are appointed by Democrats, one appointed by a Republican. So there is representation from both parties there, but there are two that were appointed by Democrats. So expect to hear that a lot from right-wing media throughout the day. But they effectively said that he's not the president anymore, and so he can face prosecution like any other American, saying for the purpose of this criminal case, former President Trump has become citizen Trump with all of the defenses of any other criminal defendant. But any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. We cannot accept former President Trump's claim that a president has unbounded authority to commit crimes that would neutralize the most fundamental check on executive power. At bottom, former President Trump's stance would collapse our system of separated powers by placing the president beyond the reach of all three branches. We cannot accept that the office of the presidency places its former occupants above the law for all time thereafter, which is, I think, well worded. It's powerful. It's also common sense. I mean, one would think, look, the idea that you are immune from all prosecution, no matter how horrendous the crime that you commit, should be laughable. And along the way, it has been laughable at various points. I will remind you that while we had to wait a month for this ruling to come out, it was just, I guess, a month ago that we were discussing their attempts in the Trump legal camp to win over the judges. And that is where we had this back and forth, if I can show you this to remind you, over the possibility of a president being immune from prosecution after having his political rivals assassinated. Like literally, I am going to dispatch SEAL Team 6. They're gonna wipe out the opposition, and then I'm probably good. I mean, as long as the Senate doesn't convict me, I suppose I'd have to be impeached and actually removed from office. Although I guess if I step down, then that literally can't happen. And so I'm just free and clear for the rest of my life. It is an insane idea, a dystopic idea of how America could function under this legal, I mean, look, I want to say rationale, but there's nothing rational about it. So an idea of how this could work. So that's done. The immunity thing is done until the Supreme Court weighs in, and that's the real X card right here. Now we're gonna get to that in just a second. I'll give you my thoughts, but there are responses from both of the sides on the legal aspect of this, including Jack Smith, who had a spokesman who was asked for comment on this and didn't have anything to say. I like to imagine they sort of like said no comment and then winked, but no confirmation yet on that. But obviously this is what Jack Smith wanted, or I should say what Jack Smith wanted was for this to go directly to the Supreme Court, so we would not have to wait a month or two or three for the next step of this. But this is at least an intermediary step until that. And then on the Trump side, he dispatched his spokesperson, Stephen Chung, who said, if immunity is not granted to a president, every future president who leaves office will be immediately indicted by the opposing party. Why? I don't know, he's not explaining. I guess because they're vindictive, I suppose. It's not the way that American history has gone. Says President Trump respectfully disagrees with the DC Circuit's decision and will appeal it in order to safeguard the presidency and the Constitution, which he cares deeply about. Now, that comment says that he respectfully disagrees. We're gonna get to what he actually said, and we'll get to evaluate whether it was respectfully or not. But for now, we do have to try to speculate about what happens from here. So we know that it's being appealed. Obviously, the Trump legal camp is going to appeal it. The next stop, the only other stop, is the Supreme Court, which at least until recently was considered final. Texas is questioning that. Lots of Republicans are coming out and saying that you don't have to abide by the Supreme Court, so maybe we shouldn't consider it all that final after all. But generally in these sorts of things, you would expect them to be the final word. And the thing is, right now, we're waiting. Like, until this is finalized, the January 6th trial can't go forward. It also potentially bears on his other legal troubles, but that's by far the most important. And we know just last week, Judge Tanya Chutkan indefinitely suspended any progress on this trial while we await the word on presidential immunity. This would seem to bring us closer, but we don't know for sure. The Supreme Court obviously has an obligation to act quickly, but that doesn't mean that they're going to. I can't necessarily guess how they're going to rule on this. I mean, look, they're incredibly conservative. The court is absolutely packed with right-wing radicals, but that has not always meant in practice that they do whatever Trump might want them to do. They seem to have a stronger attachment to right-wing ideology, some of the culture war issues that the right cares about, trying to lift regulations on business, that sort of thing, rather than commitment specifically to Donald Trump, the man. But that said, their decision in the end is not the only way that they can influence the outcome of this. They may not want to say that he's immune. They may not want to set that precedent, but they may still want to protect him, and they don't have to say that he's immune to protect him. They can just sit on their hands for a while, maybe for a long while, and push us past the actual election. Donald Trump maybe skates through, and then the entire thing could just go away. The DOJ could stop pursuing it, or he could be pardoned. He could pardon himself. And wouldn't that be nice for Donald Trump? For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.